I've been wanting to talk more about aging, and today I'm going to be talking about PMS. I just turned 45 years old. So what I'm going to go through are all of my PMS symptoms for the past several years. I have noticed some patterns, and I'm going to talk about how I deal with them. Content warning for this video, I will be talking about PMS, periods, all of those topics that are a little bit TMI and quite intimate. Let's move into the PMS symptoms now, and I know these will continue to change as I age and as my hormones fluctuate. I get a different mix of symptoms every cycle, but I'm going to talk about all of the ones that I personally experience. Now, the first thing that comes like clockwork is a headache. This is a pretty bad headache that lasts for 1 to 2 full days. Unfortunately, I haven't been prone to headaches my entire life. It's only recently that they've started syncing with my period. I usually get these headaches the Wednesday of my period because I'm not used to getting headaches. Thought, you know what, I'm just gonna let it pass. But it never passed. So what I've started doing is I've started managing these headaches. I will start to feel it usually around Tuesday evening. I'll start to feel a lot of tension and pressure in my shoulder area, my neck, the base of my skull. Tuesday night, when I start to feel that and I start to really need to move around a lot to alleviate the discomfort, stretch, and all of that, I'll take a Tylenol pain relief that pretty much all of us have in our cupboards, and I'll take one of those before I go to bed. That usually keeps the headache at bay, but if I don't keep up with the Tylenol, my headache will still arrive. So on the Wednesday, I'll take one in the morning when I wake up, I'll take one with lunch, and I'll take one again before I go to bed. And usually that's all I need in terms of relieving my headache. Now on Thursday morning, if I do start to feel that tension again, I will repeat taking Tylenol for that day, just because the headache I find is so painful, so constant. It's just this incessant throbbing that it can be quite debilitating, especially if I have a meeting or if I'm trying to work on something like my book. So the Tylenol definitely helps. Fortunately, I can manage that pain now, whereas before I did try to suffer through it. Now, less frequently, I get some lower back pain and also some pain in my boob area. This comes and goes. I mean, I don't get it every single period, but I do get it every once in a while. It's noticeable, but it's not debilitating. So I won't take Tylenol for that unless it happens to coincide with my headache. But the boob pain and the lower back pain usually comes before my period, whereas my headache comes during my period. Those are all the pain things that I have, which I'm very, very fortunate. I don't get cramps. I never really have. A little bit when I was in high school, but in my 20s, 30s, and in my 40s up till now, I don't tend to get cramps. The next thing I want to talk about that happens almost every cycle is digestion issues. Specifically, I'm talking about constipation. So I am pretty regular. I have been throughout my life as far back as I can remember. I pretty much go once a day in the morning, and sometimes, depending on what's happening in my system or if I've had some coffee and whatnot, I may go again. Leading up to my period though, and for the majority of the week when I'm on my period, I get a little bit of constipation in the sense that it's harder for me to have a bowel movement. I still will once a day in the morning, but it takes much longer than it usually does. Usually I'm in and out of the bathroom pretty quickly. So what I do on these days, as soon as I start feeling it, is I will up my fruit and vegetable intake to get more fiber, and I'll also start having 1/3 of a cup of all brown buds. Now these have psyllium fiber and they really, really work for me. I don't get any discomfort or any irregularities with my stools or anything like that. The all brown buds just help with the bowel movement, make it go much more quickly and smoothly. And also I increase my fluid intake because when you consume more fiber, you need more fluids just to keep everything moving. Otherwise, fiber can almost have the opposite effect. And for me, fluids includes water, of course, and also coffee and tea. This doesn't happen every cycle, but when I do get my hormonal acne, it's usually cystic acne. It comes in patches, and it's very, very painful. I've read that the way that you can tell it's hormonal acne is because it is on your jawline, your chin area, and also your neck. I basically don't get acne anywhere else anymore besides that area. And of course it comes and goes with my period, not every cycle, but enough that I've noticed a pattern. When this happens, I basically have to let the acne run its course, but I do have this pimple stuff that I use. I have two things that I like to use. One is the Tony Moly tomato. I've had this for ages. I don't know if it's discontinued or not, but it's kind of like a clay-like substance, a white paste that I just put on top of the blemish, and it tends to help draw out the oils and dry it up a little faster, although I do still end up getting the breakouts. And then I have another product by Acne that works very similarly, but it's not a white paste. It's like a white liquid, but it goes on clear. So once I dab it onto my spot, I can still go out and I can still have meetings and I can reapply it throughout the day. It also smells really good. It smells like oranges or tangerine. Of course, I don't love it when I have the breakouts, but it is so much more irregular and less frequent than it was before. Before I went back on birth control, and the reason I decided to go back on birth control was because my hormonal acne was very constant and it was quite severe. I was very self-conscious about it, and I was constantly in pain and like picking at my skin. So that's why I decided to try birth control again, and it did clear up my acne for the most part, except for every once in a while I'll get like a few breakouts right before my period. The last physical symptom that I want to talk about are night sweats. And this is the only symptom where there's really nothing I can do about it because I'm sleeping. I'll wake up in the middle of the night just in a cold sweat because I've been perspiring from night sweats, and then when the air hits my skin, I'm just like freezing. So I go under the covers and then it just starts again. I sweat more, I get cold. Again, this isn't every cycle. It's probably 2 or 3 cycles out of 4. So it's not too bad. And usually the night sweats only last for a night or 2, but I'm very uncomfortable and my sheets are like soaked in the morning. So I have to do laundry a bit more. A little bit of an inconvenience, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not that bad of a symptom. The last symptom I want to talk about is a big one, and it is pretty ubiquitous, I think, among people who get periods, and that is moodiness. So this is something that I never knew I got before. I guess I wasn't aware of how moody I was. Now that I'm a little older and I do a lot of self-reflection, I notice it more. And I do notice a much more moodiness in the week or 2 leading up to my period. Usually a week leading up to my period, but sometimes 2, which is awful. If I'm moody 2 weeks before my period, a week before my period, and on my period, that's like 3 weeks that I'm moody out of the month. So then I start thinking maybe it's me, maybe it's not my hormones, maybe I'm just a moody person in general. So there's a lot of that like guilt and shame around moodiness, a lot of self-blame and self-hatred that can come about because of that. So I do a lot of tracking and journaling and gratitude practices and the like. Now, my moodiness comes in various shapes and forms. The one that is probably most frequent is irritation, frustration, anger, rage, that spectrum of emotions. I've been trying to rein it in a little more. Of course, I still feel the emotion. I'm not trying to suppress the emotion, but I don't want to lash out because I know the emotion will come and go. So I don't want to affect the people around me. I don't want to snap at my husband. I don't want to like throw a tantrum. If there's someone in my vicinity that I could potentially affect with my moodiness, I really do try to feel it just within and not express it outward. So I do express myself through journaling, as I mentioned, through my daily walks. A walk will help if I'm feeling frustrated or impatient or irritated, and journaling, specifically morning pages, does help with my anger and rage because I really take it out on the page, and then I shred the page right after. So all of that has been expressed, and then I can release it. I just try not to release it towards someone because it's not fair to the other person, and it took me a long time to learn that, unfortunately. I tended to be a very reactive person when I was feeling those types of emotions, and now I'm really trying to be a bit more just like intentional with my words and with my behaviors. So the majority of the time, I would say 95% of the time when I'm feeling moody due to my hormones, they are those emotions. But the other 5% of the time, it's sadness. And that is a little bit more difficult for me because I'm not used to it as much. I felt this a lot in February and March before my period, and it was very intense. And again, I didn't know where it was coming from, so it was very confusing. Or at first I didn't clue in that it was probably my hormones. I was in a time in my life where I should have been very happy. It's like all these shoulds, right? Like there's nothing really wrong with my life. I should be grateful for everything I have. I should be content. I should be happy. And yet there was this sadness. And fortunately it passed, but I kept thinking about it and journaling on it, and I couldn't figure it out. And then I realized that maybe it was PMS because it was the week before my period, and I noticed in March it happened again, and it was the same, that trough of sadness. I didn't want to do anything. I just felt very like hopeless and down all the time, very depressed. I didn't know if I would come out of it because when you're in that state, you really feel like it's going to last forever. Even though I know about the ebbs and flows of emotions, I know this logically. I know about anicca, which is the Buddhist concept of impermanence. I know all these things, but when you're feeling a certain way, you feel like you're gonna be there forever. So that was a hard time for me, February and March, right before my period. I would say it was like a week or two before my period, and then I came out of it, as I always do, but it really threw me for a loop. I became really apprehensive in April, waiting for that emotion to come when I was around a week or two out from my period, but it didn't arrive, and I haven't felt the same sadness since March. So, I mean, that's great. I didn't do anything out of the ordinary. I doubled down on my self-care practices, but I didn't take anything, although I did look into herbal supplements and such because I was feeling so out of sorts. I didn't end up taking anything because a lot of these supplements react with birth control, so I wanted to be very careful about that, and I just decided to wait it out, and it hasn't come back. I know one day it will, but right now I'm still in that pattern of moodiness in terms of irritability, frustration, and anger. But fortunately, I'm pretty good at managing those now. Those are all of the PMS symptoms that I wanted to talk about. If you experience PMS, regardless of what age range you are in right now, I'd love to hear from you. If you have similar symptoms to me or different ones, if you deal with them in the same way that I do, or if you have a different approach, I would love to connect with you in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will be back very soon. Until then, please take care, and bye for now.